Hey y'all, it's David. I'm out here on the back porch at the house. Gonna shoot the video out here tonight. Didn't get things done earlier today, so got to get it in when we can. Um, we've been going through this series on dogs and how that relates to us. And so we talked about the finished dog yesterday. And we talked about, what are the requirements for a finished dog, in my opinion. And all. If you haven't seen that, feel free to go back. And what we're going to concentrate on from this point on is going to be some types of finished dogs. But before we get into that, let's talk about what some people think they have a finished dog, but they have a trash runner. We touched a little bit on that yesterday. So trash runners is a term that we beaglers use to describe some dogs. Some of them are dogs that we run, that we've owned. Some of them are, I get the question a lot of times now, are these trash runners, or, are your dogs, do you have any trash runners in the group? That's a common term that's used. And, it's kind of interesting when you use the word trash. That usually refers to something you don't want. There is a saying, one man's trash is another man's treasure. But most time when we think about trash, it's like, hey, let's take out the trash. Let's get rid of it. Hey, that trash stinks. Get rid of it. And so, when you're talking about a dog that's a trash runner, you're referring to it's running off game. And some of you that don't know what we're talking about, it doesn't mean you're running the game off. Man, we wanted the game to be here. You're running it off. It's talking about off game, meaning not the intended game we wanted to run. I'm explaining this because it was kind of unique. I get text and different things from people, and I find it unique that some of y'all have girlfriends or wives that are watching these videos, and they're actually learning a lot about beagles by watching these videos, which is probably, my wife's probably learning a lot by sitting on the other side of this camera and videoing this, because if you'd ask her what a trash running dog is, she probably wouldn't have been able to give you an accurate description, but that's okay. We're trying to get her educated as well. So anyhow, when you say you have a trash running dog, it's running off game, meaning for us that are in the beagle world, that are dealing with me, you want rabbit dogs, okay? So your targeted game to run is a rabbit. You don't want your beagle running squirrels. You don't want them running deer. You don't want them running fox, coyotes, bobcats. You only want them running rabbits. I remember the first time that I went rabbit hunting here in Mississippi. We owned a farm that had about 700 acres, and guy said, David, he'd done some work down on the farm, and he said, David, I'd love to come down here, and I'd love to run some rabbits. I'd love to take you rabbit hunting. I said, that sounds great. Let's do it. So we met on a Saturday morning, and he dropped his dogs out. About 30 minutes into the hunt, they took off, and I didn't know what was going on. But at that moment, they were on the wrong thing. And so he didn't have any shock collars on the dogs. And so what was supposed to be a rabbit hunt turned into a search for dogs for hours. And his dogs were gone, and I think sometime later that week they started showing back up, and he started getting phone calls. And he said, David, I can't run down here, there's too many deer. And I didn't know anything at that point about any of the way this worked. I'd done a little rabbit hunting with my uncle when I was a kid, but that was it. And back then, nobody had shock collars. So if you have trash runners, it's not going to be a lot of fun to hunt with, because you're going to go out intending to have a rabbit hunt. And I tell people this all the time. If you're taking some young kids out, come on, go rabbit hunting with me. We're going to go back. I'm going to show you how it was back when we used to I hunted with my grandpa, and this is some of the first hunting I ever did was rabbit hunting. You'll love it. Come on, let's go. And so the kid goes out there, and 30 minutes to an hour into the hunt, the dogs take off, and they run the wrong thing. You can't find them. You're fuming mad. They've wasted their day. They didn't get to shoot a rabbit because the rest of the day was spent chasing dogs and trying to find a dog. That's not a pretty picture of a hunt at all, and that's going to make the kid not ever want to go if they think that's their idea of rabbit hunting, if that's their introduction to rabbit hunting. Same thing's true in life. If their introduction to, say, going to church, for those people that are active in church, imagine if the church experience was not a good one for them. You know, they come in, here comes some kids in that have never been to church. They're 8, 9 years old, whatever age, and they come in, they're a little excited, a little rambunctious, and their introduction to church is, shut up and sit down and listen to what we have to say. Well, that's not much love and affection there to someone like that. So they're not going to want anything to do if that's their introduction to the church and Christianity. By the same token, as adults, if you're trying to reach someone, you know, you have to tell the truth, but you have to tell it in love. And if you just tell the truth without love, you're dying and going to hell. That's not a wrong message. If you don't have Christ, you're dying and going to hell. But if you told that just like I just said it, you're pushing more people away than you're doing good. And you say, well, what does this have to do with trash running dogs? Well, trash runners are dogs that are running the wrong thing. And the world is full of people that are running and chasing the wrong thing. And it's our job to show them a better way. And, you know, I've had guys come out with dogs and they're like, well, I tell you what, I don't believe in a shock collar. If a dog runs the wrong thing, we just leave them in the woods and we're done with that dog. You're leaving some dogs that could be real good dogs in the woods. How do you expect something to make it if it's, you know, we talked about a started dog, that it needs to be given a chance to start. I think when you have a finished dog, you don't just throw it to the side because it did the wrong thing. Imagine if you're that way with, you know, your kids. Oh, he screwed up. Let's just leave him on the corner. We're not having him no more. You didn't give him any instruction. You didn't correct him. You didn't do anything. He's just supposed to be perfect. You know, I've owned one beagle hound in all my experience, and I'm telling y'all, I don't claim to be God's gift to anything, but I have owned and raised a lot of dogs, a lot more than the average person. And I've only had one dog that I've ever owned as a puppy that came all the way up. Dog, I did not buy a finished dog with this one. I bought her as a puppy. When I started, I had 4 finished dogs is what I bought the very first year. Then I got 3 puppies. Everybody knows about Hunter the Retrieving Beagle. That was one. But he had a sister named Lucy. Lucy was that one dog that I've owned that never, ever ran the wrong thing. Never. Not as a pup. Never. Never had to shock that dog. She always came when I called her. She always ran the right thing. But that's very, very, very rare. Now, there's not a perfect person that's ever walked the face of the earth except Jesus when he came down and took the form of a man. That's the only person that's ever walked the face of the earth that was perfect. So none of us are perfect. But we all have to be given, you know, correction and a second chance. So if you're one of those people that believes, you know, a dog that runs trash, I don't want it, you're going to be going through a lot of dogs. I'm not saying you want a trash runner, but I'm saying when you have that scenario come up, what do? Correct it with the shock collar. People ask me sometimes, I talk to some people, a lot of times it's usually the older generation that didn't grow up with shock collars in their rabbit hunting. And they'll be like, I talked to a guy just the other day and he was like, well, I don't know about shock collars. They seem inhumane. So there's some ways that people used to try to break their dogs. And we talk about the broken finished dogs. So when we're talking about this trash running, there were some supposedly preventive methods I've heard of that guys used to use. Maybe you've heard of them. Talk about inhumane. One guy told me one time that what they did to get their dogs not to run deer is they would take the dog, they would take a 55-gallon drum, they would put a deer hide in the drum with bricks and rocks, put the dog in there, put the lid on it, and roll it down the hill. And the dog was supposed to be so freaked out by the bricks hitting him and different things that the scent of that deer would make him never want to associate anything with that deer again because it was a bad experience. To me, that was just total. It was just totally stupid and animal cruelty at its finest there. I don't know how that was supposed to do anything to that dog except traumatize him. And when he would have come out, it would seem to me like he would just be traumatized, and you'd create a very shy dog that would want to run away. So what else was a plan they used? Well, what they would do, one guy told me about this one. Well, David, what we did was we would get number 9 shot, and when one ran trash, we'd get over close enough and we'd shoot it in the rear end from a distance and pepper the dog. Once again, another moronic way to do something, if that's a word, moronic. Anyhow, they would do that, but that's just crazy. What do you think the first thing I think of when I hear that is? It looks to me like that'd make that dog gun shy when you shot at it like that. That didn't make sense. Then there was the method of, and the most common method was, we'll go catch the dog. We got to go run it down. We got to get over and we got to cut it off, and we got to run it down. And then we're going to take a switch or a belt and we're going to spank that dog and discipline it. Okay, so by the time you got a hold of the dog, does he know what you're disciplining him for, if that's your form of discipline? Would that make him want to come to you? Seemed like he'd be like, that guy's going to beat me. I don't want to go to him. So I don't know how any of those methods were supposed to work very effectively. I personally like to go back to my childhood in my dog training. You say, what do you mean? When I was growing up, practically every day, David got a spanking. Practically every day. It was just a way of life. You know, you did stupid things as a kid, you got a spanking. Just part of life every day. But then there were times when you really screwed up and you got what was known as a butt whooping. I'm keeping this G-rated. So it was known as a butt whooping. And those were designed to instill in you, you know, they say they applied the what was it? Something, the truth to the seed of learning or whatever. But anyhow, I got that terminology mixed up, I'm sure. But anyhow, what they were doing is they were instilling in you a remembrance that you will never do this again. You know, if you want to throw rocks at a car or something and they caught you, you got a butt whooping. You would never even want a rock in your hand when a car come by at that point. So what I say is this: when a dog gets to be older, I'm not talking about a puppy, I'm talking about an older dog, depending on how long you've been running it, okay? But usually 10, 12, 13 months old. If they run the wrong thing, then what I do is I don't give a tone, I don't give a warning. I simply turn my shot collar up all the way and I let the dog have it, okay? And then I'm gonna hold the button down, let up, I'm gonna mash the button again. When they come flying back to me or start yipping and carrying on and come back to me, I act like I don't know what they're yipping about. What's wrong? What happened? Did that deer get you? Come on, let's go get a rabbit. It works for me, okay? I don't know how to tell you any other way. Some of y'all would say, well, that seems awful extreme. You shouldn't be doing that. I can tell you that when you do that, I can tell you that I'm grateful my parents gave me a butt whooping on a lot of things in life, because I didn't grow up the wrong way. I grew up, and I think those of us that grew up in those times and in that era, you know, when we had Bible in schools, Pledge of Allegiance, and were taught respect, and we were actually disciplined, you know, it didn't hurt us. It made us better people. I'm not telling you to go out and beat your kid. I'm not telling you any of that stuff. I'm just telling you the way I was raised, it worked for me. I'm telling you the way I do this with dogs, it works. My whole point of bringing that up is this. There are dogs that might want to run trash today, but once you do what you need to do to them, and it doesn't seem to work with this, oh, please don't run a deer. Please don't do that. Let me put you in a timeout for a minute, like some parents these days seem to do. I'm not an advocate for child abuse at all, but I am an advocate for what works, and discipline works on these dogs this way. This method works for me. Okay, if you choose not to do it, that's your business. I'm just telling you what works for me. But I can't sit there and reason with that dog. I have to hit him where I know it will work. And when you hit that shock collar, this works. Most of the time after I do that one time, I will not have any more problems, and they will not be trash runners. You know, the thing about us in life is we are all born with a trash running problem in our life. We don't seem to just naturally always want to do the right thing. And sometimes we're influenced by another person to do it. Sometimes we're the one that starts it. You know, when you go out with a pack of beagles and you go, well, David, why do you want to make sure you don't have a trash running dog? The answer is very simple. You don't want one that's causing that problem to teach your young dogs to do that. You know, sometimes if you have one dog to start doing the wrong thing, next thing you know, you got a whole bunch of them going right along with it. And now they're all running trash. Why? Because one person did it. Ever heard this before? Ever been one who said this before? Well, everybody else was doing it. I've heard that. I'm sure I said that as a kid. I heard all of my kids say that. But Dad, I wasn't the only one. And I became like my father and my mother. You know what? You might not have been the only one, but you're the only one I'm dealing with because you're mine. And so my point to all this is this. It doesn't really matter whether you're the one who starts doing wrong or somebody else started doing wrong. It's never right to do wrong. So we have to be smart enough to look at things and go, hey, I'm not going to run that trash. Because what happens when you run trash? What happens when the dog runs trash? Number one, the dog's master is not happy. Number two, if they run that trash and they're just left to go and nobody corrects them, what can happen to them? Well, they can get miles away from you. Coyotes could get them if they stayed out all night and you didn't have them back. They're definitely not back where they can get their food and water and care for like they need to. They could get out on the road at night or in the daylight, get way away from you and get hit by a car. So there's a lot of bad things that can happen to a dog that runs trash. He may lose his way and never find his way back to you. Somebody else might pick him up. And you know, somebody else might pick him up and they might be that abusive dog owner. So, you know, relating that to us is, remember what was the first thing I said was happening when that dog run trash? His master is not happy. And you know, God is our master. And he's not happy when we run trash. It doesn't make him happy at all. Now, the good thing is he will forgive us for that, just like you'll forgive your dog for running trash. But you're going to try to do something so he knows not to do that anymore. And God has a way of disciplining us as well, to teach us don't run that trash. But you know, the good news is that just because you've run trash, you can get a second chance. Just like I tell you, the people that leave their dog in the woods because it runs trash, they weren't very good masters. They wanted perfection, but they didn't want to sink the time in. The good news is for us is we have a master that will give us a second chance, even though we didn't make him happy when we ran the trash. So I urge you to be a person that understands, don't run the trash of life. If you've got beagle hounds, I hope this has been beneficial to you. If you have any questions, please comment. I'll help you any way I can. I do not claim to know everything about anything. But what do we do when we have trash runners, and how do we know we have a trash runner? There's two things I want to say about that, which will lead into the very next dog we're going to talk about. Number one, how do I know immediately when I have trash running going on? I have tell-on dogs. Well, what do you mean by tell-on dogs? They will come back and say, Daddy, that's wrong, that ain't a rabbit. Now, I don't know whether they're running a deer, they're running a coyote, they're running something, but it is not a rabbit, okay? That's the next one we're going to talk about, is the tell-on dog. The other thing I want to say is this, and I'll tell a quick story and be done with this. You cannot assume the dog is running a deer just because you saw a deer pop out, okay? I had some guys one time I sold a dog to, and they told me, hey, this dog run deer. we saw a deer. I yelled, deer, deer, deer. And my brother had the controller and he rolled him. He turned it up and rolled him and said all he'd do then is follow us around. Well, this was a 4-year-old dog and I knew him like the back of my hand. And I told him, I said, hey, bring him on back. Gave him their money back. As soon as they gave me the money back, I did an odd thing. I asked them, would they like to double or nothing on their money? And what do you mean? I said, tell me the story of what happened. They told me the story that they saw the deer, they saw the dog, they shocked the dog wouldn't hunt the rest of the day. I told them, double or nothing. We'll go out here and drop the dog without a shock collar right now on a deer. If he runs it, I'll give you your money again. If he doesn't, you give me the money I gave you back and I'll keep the dog. Because I knew this dog. He was a very excellent dog. See, what happened was they assumed he was running the wrong thing. They assumed that because they saw a deer and they saw him bark, they saw him running, they assumed he was running the wrong thing. Now, sometimes in life, we don't give people the benefit of the doubt. And we think that they're running something wrong. They're doing something wrong, when in essence they may not be. And you say, well, David, what's that got to do with dogs? Okay, you watch my videos, you see I have lanes. You may see a deer pop out in that lane. And I'm not telling you that the dogs are not running it, but here's what I do. I practice this. They are innocent until proven guilty. If I see that deer come out, I have my control ready, but I watch. Nothing will make you happier as a dog owner when you see deer pop out, your dogs are coming the same direction, and there comes a rabbit out, and they were running the rabbit and not the deer. It makes you feel really proud as a dog owner. And you know you're the master of those dogs. We talked about God as our master. How proud does it make God to know that we're out here and there's trash around us? We're in the same area as the trash. We're all up in amongst it. In the world is full of trash, full of things that can distract us and full of things that we could chase and run that are wrong. But we're not. We're following the rabbit. We're following God. We're on what we're supposed to be on in the midst of all the deer. I hope this has been beneficial to you. I hope that you understand about what we now call trash runners. I hope you'll tune in tomorrow when we talk about tell on them dogs. Remember, stick to what we're supposed to run to and stay off the trash. Have a great day.